Remember, this show is PG-13, so you might hear a naughty word or two.
Today, the greatest rivalries of the 80s, concentrating on the Romanians and Soviets. We're going to set the stage with the pre-80s dramatics, including the 1977 Romanian protest walkout, Nelly Kim never getting over the fact that the world did not recognize that she got a 10 minutes after Nadia got a 10. We're going to talk about age falsification, the Iron Curtain, China being like, boom, we were still doing gymnastics the whole time, completely corrupt judging, boycotts, Boganskaya, biting, and beautiful gymnastics. This episode was originally recorded in 2019, and it's one of our favorites, and actually a question about what's in this episode just came up and behind the scenes, so I hope you guys enjoy it. And welcome to the #1 gymnastics podcast in the galaxy. I'm Jessica, and I'm here with Spencer from the Balance Beam Situation. Let's talk about this commission.
Yes, this episode has been commissioned by Club Gym Nerd member Chemo, who requested an episode all about the 1980s rivalries between the Romanians and the Soviets, both team and individually. Yes, please. I'm so excited.
Thank you for letting us do this. Chemo, spelled K-I-M-O. Club Gym Nerd members like Chemo help us pay the bills and deliver our weekly podcasts and live shows and travel for the meet coverage that we do. Lots of that coming up this summer and next year. If you'd like to become a Club Gym Nerd member, see details at gymcastic.com. And there are membership tiers and little perks, and all the way up to the very top tier, which is the intergalactic champion like Chemo, who can commission a full episode. So let's begin.
So I want to set the scene for the Romanian-Soviet rivalry and expand the purview of the commission a little bit. I'm sure it'll be okay because there's some weirdness from the 70s that we absolutely have to talk about. So in the beginning, there were the Soviets. From 1952 to 1978, the Soviet Union won every world team title, every Olympic team title, every world team title except one in 1966 when Czechoslovakia, led by Vera Czeslavska, won the team title in Dortmund. So there was one competition from 1952 to 1978 where the Soviet Union didn't win the team title. They were dominating every single other one.
And remember, this is the era of the 10.0 max score. No difficulty and execution scores added together. One score, maximum was a 10. And in case you aren't old like us, a reminder about the Soviet Union. Because
this is the children's disclaimer.
This is the children's disclaimer.
Yeah.
For children who don't remember that when this was a country or union of countries, the Soviet Union was a socialist state made up of what are now 15 different countries and existed from 1922 to 91. The Soviet Union, along with the Chinese, invented great women's gymnastics, in case you didn't know. Modern gymnastics. You guys, we're not talking about the 50s and the 30s when gymnastics was like rope climbing and doing exercises in a field. We're talking about modern gymnastics. So don't write your letters about the Netherlands winning the first exercises on a field. Okay. Flips, you guys. That's what we're talking about. So the Soviets had the original stars of gymnastics ever, starting with Latinina. She is the most decorated gymnast of all time. That's by most world and Olympic medals of any color. So yes, more than Horkina, more than Simone. She has 31 or 32. She has a lot of them. And this was modern gymnastics, huge, gigantic star. So Romania, on the other side, because we're going to concentrate a lot on them because that's what Chemo wanted. And because, obviously, Romania was one of the few...
because there's the weirdest stuff about Romania.
Oh my God, you guys. Like, I hope someday Nadia writes like a full tell-all book, because her book is... There's so many details missing. Like, there's a lot of fascinating things in it, but I want the real behind-the-scenes story, and I want a historian to put it all in context about how she was used as a political pawn and didn't know it, but what was really happening. Oh, so many things.
Add it to the list of all the gymnastics documentaries we need made.
There
are so many.
So many. So Romania was one of the few Eastern Bloc countries that remained free-ish from Soviet control. Part of their dictator Ceausescu's independent take on socialism was that they were going to establish the Romanian sports school, and it was going to be different than the Soviet sports schools. And part of this was having gymnastics. But the thing is that the Romanians kept getting their asses kicked by the Soviets until Romania invented middle schoolers competing instead of high school or women, full-grown adults, doing gymnastics. And that is where we begin our story. So Romania was not the next best team until the Nadia times. Spencer.
Yeah, 1976 Olympics were Romania's first ever second place finish in a team competition. That was the year the Nadiaing of Romanian gymnastics, and they became the second best team and the most viable rival to the Soviet Union. And the rivalry was immediately intense. So we get to talk about 1977 Euros now. The first major significant competition after the 1976 Olympics and Nadia's 10 and all of that. And it was great, fascinating, hilarious, ridiculous, because halfway through the competition, the Romanian team walked out in protest. Jessica's dream, a team walking out in protest of the competition.
And, okay, so this is the crazy thing and why I totally, well, you know, I endorse grand political protests at all times. Mm-hmm. Story about that coming up later, except for sometimes when it's not all about you. But in this case, it was. It's all about them.
Unless the political protest is bad and that we don't endorse it at all.
It's always good, but sometimes you have to keep it Kozlovska-esque.
Don't make any brooms. No, never mind. Damn it. I wasn't going to talk about it at all.
You let it slip. Okay, Nelly Kim. So, vault finals.
Yeah, the vault final was what kicked it all off.
Right. So Nelly Kim goes and she does a souk full. So that's a difficult vault, right? But this is under the 10 system. She has a super low landing and a hop forward. So she's short and she hops forward, right? Her next vault is a laid out souk. So that's a difficult vault, right? But her knees are bent. It's very unattractive, especially from this time of beautiful execution. So, you know, they were difficult, but bad vaults. So she beat Nadia. Now, Nadia did a perfect, it's Nadia. So you know what I'm saying? Perfect stuck piked souk and got a 9.75. Okay. This made absolutely no sense. So, cue the walkout.
Yeah. Romania was very unhappy about this result. And it's interesting because you watch it, like, if that comparison of vaults had taken place now under the current code of points, you'd be like, yeah, Nelly Kim won. So her difficulty score was so much higher.
It was way higher.
That was not the system then. And watching it, you're like, oh yeah, Nadia was so much cleaner. So Romania was pissed. They continued competing for the bars final that same day, and Nadia tied Mukina. There was a lot of tying. Well, you know, that's the sign of the like controversial, ridiculous cheating competitions when there's like a long delay, and then suddenly there's end up with a tie. So they tied for bars gold, but Romania was upset. They walked out of the competition before the second day of event finals. So they did not participate in the beam final. They did not participate in the floor final. The federation released a statement saying that they were withdrawing from those finals to protest, quote, technical deficiencies and methods appearing in the judges' actions that altered the results. So they claimed
cheating. That's
cheating.
Translation cheating.
They were saying that the judges were assigned in violation of the code of points. So they picked judges not the way you're supposed to, and that the final vault ranking was changed without explanation. And it's kind of a hilarious read also at the end, because they're like, Romania, unlike some other countries, cares about treating our athletes with the utmost respect. And meanwhile, cut to Amelia Eberle, who's like, really? The utmost respect? That's what's happening right now? So it's ridiculous. Everyone's preposterous, but it kicked it all off. This is not just sports anymore.
Right. So, you know, I love a good dramatic protest, and we need more of these. And obviously what Romania did was completely justified. But let me I'll talk about the political background for this, because it was a huge deal that Romania did this. Because imagine, like, you have
They walked out of the competition. Yeah, it was a huge deal.
Yeah, it was a huge deal. But also, like, you have little tiny baby Romania. It's such a tiny little country. And then you have the Soviet Union, the giant looming world superpower with nuclear capability. And you're there like, we are going to stay separate from you, and you can't take us over, and we're going to be independent, and we're going to, like, make sure that everybody knows that we're standing up to the superpower. So The Soviet Union could have crushed Romania. They could have invaded them, destroyed them. Romania literally had people starving to death in the country, and this is happening right around the time that, after the time when Czechoslovakia was invaded by the Soviets. And you remember the famous political protest. It was like 10 years earlier, I think, when this happened, right? So the political protest against the Soviets that happened during the Olympics, where Chaslovska in the 1968 Olympics, the Soviets invaded Czechoslovakia. She won the gold on floor. She's from Czechoslovakia. The judges then see that she's going to beat the Soviet gymnast. The Soviets are now controlling Czechoslovakia, where she's from. They change her score. They are now both standing on the podium. Now they've all of a sudden tied. The athletes were pawns in the political system, and sport was used to rank the superpowers of the country. And remember what Kozlovska did? She stood on the podium, and when the Soviet national anthem was played, she turned her head down and to the side in protest and suffered greatly when she went back to her country for this. So, even if the athletes didn't know that they were being used, which was what Nadia always says, she didn't know that she was being used in this way by the Romanian state. The Romanians walking out of the competition in protest of the scoring that was favoring the Soviets was a giant FU to the Soviet Union and a huge deal. And now I would like to take a moment to talk about what I have learned and applied to my personal life when we talk about Kozlovska and protests. So, Spencer.
Please go.
Okay, so I went to a Catholic high school graduation ceremony this past weekend. And, I knew it was Catholic school, fine. I did not know that the archdiocese of the city or state or whatever was going to be there. Now, my feelings about the Catholic Church and how...
I am vaguely aware.
Right.
Yes.
They're an international crime syndicate. So I was not happy about this. But because I follow college gymnastics, I learned that it's not all about me. It's not my moment. It's about the graduates. And they chose to go to a school that's part of an international crime syndicate. And they chose to have this dude here. That's not about me. Now is not the time for my political protest. There are other times for that. But because I'm a gymnastics fan and a student of gymnastics history, I took a note from Vera's book. And I Kozlovska'd every time the archdiocese got up to say anything. So when he got up to give a prayer, I turned my head down and to the side and Kozlovska'd. That was my personal... I may have also been flipping him off from inside my pants pockets, but not in my pants, but in my pants. My hands were in my pockets. But so it was very subtle. I'm very proud of myself for not causing a scene. But anyway, so...
Yes. And if you listeners thought we were going to get through a historical episode without talking about the Vyacheslawska and the Olympics protest, you were sorely mistaken. Of course, we're going to talk about it. It's our favorite story ever.
It's the most important thing that's ever happened in gymnastics, really.
Yeah.
I mean, all the skills and stuff are nice, but really that's important. And This is how you can apply this podcast to your life. Life lessons here on GymCastic.
There you go.
Okay. So we may continue now. Getting back to the greatest rivalry of all personal rivalries until we get to the 90s.
If we're going to talk about individual rivalries between the Romanians and Soviets, I think we first have to talk about the one that started it all, which is Nadia Comaneci and Nelly Kim rivalry. Dun, dun, dun. I firmly maintain that Nelly Kim is 100% still not over Nadia becoming famous for getting a 10 when Nelly also got a 10 at those Olympics.
Minutes later, she got the second.
Was it?
10.
I felt like it was because Nadia got her first 10 in compulsories, right?
Wasn't it? But wasn't it on vault? Well, it wasn't the compulsory vault. You're right.
I don't
it was
think
optional.
Nelly Kim got a 10 until later.
I thought
it was
the
same competition.
Yeah, same meet, but not the same day. Okay. Yes.
I believe. But yeah, I still feel like I think there's an argument to be made that the whole reason we have an open-ended scoring system now is that Nelly didn't get the 10 first. I'm not saying that argument holds water. I'm saying I might make it.
That's for sure the reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Grudges.
And it was this a classic comparison because, like you talked about with that vault final at 77 Europeans, you had Nellie. It was like the difficulty trickster, and we make fun of her naming all the skills after herself retroactively, but she was a difficulty pioneer in terms of and a powerful gymnast. And you had Nadia going clean, and it was that clean versus difficulty dichotomy. Maybe our first instance, and certainly not the last, of like Nadia went cleaner, but Nellie had more difficulty.
And just to fill in the blanks here, so in case this is the first time you listen to the podcast and you haven't done all of your homework listening to all of our commissions on the history of the sport.
Please contextualize.
So contextualize. So Nelly Kim went on to coach and judge and then become the women's technical committee head, which is the person in charge of, so she created the current code of points. And when she did that, she named a whole bunch of skills after herself. And then also at some point took out a ton of skills that used to be
named
skills
after other people.
that were named after other people. So that is why we were talking about her and the power that she, like this sense of imagined fury that we have assigned to her, being the fuel that shot her to the top of the FIG, the Gymnastics Federation, where all the rules are decided, and where she still resides now. Not as a technical committee head, but as like the vice president or something. So, the 1979 Worlds.
Yes, very significant in the Romania Soviet Union rivalry. 1979 World Championships held in Fort Worth, Texas, at the same arena where we just were for NCAAs 40 years later, the anniversary of Romania winning its first ever women's team title, defeating the Soviet Union in very dramatic fashion, because this was the Nadia infected wrist World Championships. So if you don't know the story, as the tale goes, Nadia's doing great. She looks fantastic in training. She nails compulsories. And then news comes that Nadia has an injury. She cut her wrist on her grip and it got infected. And she's not going to be able to compete. She had to go to the hospital, but then she had surgery of some kind. And then she comes back triumphantly to the competition for team optionals so that she can compete a hands-free bream routine, which was not invented by Sam Pesek, by the way. It had happened before. She gets a 9.95 for it, which was high enough that Romania could drop a fall from Amelia Eberle and score ahead of the Soviet Union, and they would have lost to the Soviet Union again had Nadia not triumphantly reemerged to do a beam routine.
Now, let's discuss and I'm doing air quotes, infected wrist story.
Okay.
So, here's what actually happened.
Did this actually happen in the real world or just in Jessica?
No, in the real world. This
just
is what
sometimes I need to
happened.
clarify.
This is from Nadia's version of what happened.
Okay.
So, Nadia... Okay, so she goes to the 76 Olympics. She becomes a huge, gigantic international star. So the state wants to use her as an example of the amazing system, the Romanian sports system, the Romanian version of socialism, which is different than the Soviet version, and they want to have pride in this. Well, the Karolis and Bella, he's getting all the credit. He's pandering to the camera, which we love when like Linus from Denver does it, but we hate it when it's a confessed child abuser. So he's getting all this credit, but they don't like that in the Romanian state. So also the child abuser, if you've not listened to all the episodes. So in 2011,
bring the receipts just in case we get in trouble or something.
So in 2011 in the Sacramento Bee or KCRA, Eberle and Posar, who's the choreographer for Nadia and still owns a gym in Sacramento, he and another gymnast all came out and told the truth about the Romanian conditions under the Karolis, which were they were beaten, starved. They went into detail about this. And at the time, Marta Karoli said, anyone who said that these things about how we trained them in Romania are, and I quote, trash. Fast forward to 2019, Bella is on a national news program. The reporter says, what about the stories that you abused and hit gymnasts when you're a coach? And Bella says, maybe 40 years ago in Romania, but not here. So there's our evidence for the Karolis and what it was really like in Romania. So back to Nadia in the 70s, huge star. She comes back, cannot be stopped, competes. She's amazing. That's how amazing Nadia is. And that's how deep all the crazy stuff that went on in the 80s was. And think about what we'll find out, 20, 30 years from now, what's going on now that we don't know about in all the different countries. So back to the 1979 Worlds in Fort Worth, Texas.
You can see why we wanted to expand this beyond the 80s. With the walkout and the Nadia wrist, like there's a lot from the 70s that we needed to break down here. So 79 Worlds, Romania wins the team competition. Soviet Union had a bunch of falls on bars. It was a very un-Soviet performance. Nelly Kim put her hand down on floor and still got a 9.75, by the way. Mukina was out injured. So it was from the Soviet perspective, it was a very oh, well, you only won because kind of result. Oh, well, we had all these falls and otherwise we would have won. But Romania's we won. Everything's changed. So that's sort of the festering wound that ushers in the 80s team rivalry between the Romanians and the Soviets.
Dun, dun, dun! The 1980s Olympics. Cue crazy, insane judging.
Oh, yes. This was the key era. I mean, I know we've had a lot of insane judging, but late 70s, early 80s, I think is the
peak.
Most overt it ever was.
So I want to set the scene for the political background because this plays into everything, especially when it plays into everything with all the countries, but especially the little Romania up against big bad Soviet Union in their view. So the Soviets had just invaded Afghanistan. And in protest, the U.S. boycotted the Olympics, the 1980 Olympics, which were happening in Moscow, the capital of the Soviet Union. So now the irony about this, of course, is doing a podcast in 2019 when the U.S. invaded Afghanistan 18 years ago, and we've been at war ever since. The Soviets invaded Afghanistan. They were there for 8 years and was oh, this is an unwinnable war. Bye. We're still there 18 years later. Now, why do I bring this up? Because the most important thing about this is that that gymnastics fans were deprived of television coverage of the 1980 Olympic Games. It was not shown in the U.S. The programming was canceled after the boycott. So I just want you to know why there is a gap in our history and the crazy fandom that should have happened, because if you'd watched the amazing athletes at the 80 Olympics, it would have mattered that there were no Americans because it was an incredible gymnastics meet, but we didn't get to see it in the United States. And so, but now thank God for YouTube.
I know. We wouldn't be able to do this podcast without YouTube.
So anyway,
to find out all these things that happened before I was born. So 1980 Olympics, certainly a big moment for the Soviet and Romanian rivalry, especially coming off Romania winning in 1979, and now the Soviet Union is hosting the Olympics, and they're oh, hell no. Right. Is that going to happen again? But it was a question because this was the time when Mukina was paralyzed. That was 2 weeks before the 1980 Olympics, and she was... she had won the world all-around championship in 1978. We don't know, but I feel full strength Mukina would have won the all-around title at these Olympics.
Totally.
I think she was the best gymnast in the world if she had been healthy. Yeah. So everything was kind of thrown up. It was scary because she was paralyzed on a Thomas skill and a rollout, and people were still doing this. Also, competition-wise, threw everything up in the air, and it was in the all-around. Now it was Nadia and Yelena Davidova, and this competition. I mean, it's the kind of thing where there's no way to say oh, this person deserved this or that score. This was everything was crazy. Everything was corrupt. Everything was a ridiculous nonsense, culminating in the all-around final. As I believe we've talked about before, the 30-minute delay on Nadia's beam score. Because
30 minutes, you guys! Can we just stop for a second? 30 minutes.
30 minutes. That score took 30 minutes to come up because Maria Simeonescu tried to lobby the other judges to raise their scores for Nadia's beam. And then when they wouldn't do it, she refused to enter it into the computer to confirm that Nadia did not win all-around gold. They ultimately gave Nadia a 985 on that beam routine. She would have needed 995 to move ahead of Davidova. And it was like there was a kind of a large balance error, which now we can watch these routines. We don't have to rely on like retelling. We can watch them. There was a kind of 2 adjustment wobble on a flick-flack to scale in Nadia's routine. I know all judging was ridiculous then. You can't really justify a 995 for that routine. So they gave her 985. Right. She ties for silver. Yelena Davidova is the Olympic all-around champion.
Now, that's the thing. I feel the same about you. I don't have a problem with that score. Like, that was not Nadia's best beam routine.
No, she had a major adjustment.
Right.
I feel like, because why I wanted to contextualize it is that I feel like Maria Simonescu trying to get Nadia a score was just blatant cheating. But at the same time, like, that was the only blatant cheating happening in that judging at that competition. Like, everyone was doing it.
Right. Because what comes up next. So now we get back to our favorite characters in the story, Nadia versus Nelly Kim. So we're in the floor finals now. We're in Moscow. We're on Nelly Kim's home turf in the Soviet Union. Nadia gets a 9-9 on floor. Nelly Kim is now in first place. She is going to win gold. She's going to be on the podium by herself. No Nadia getting in the way of the spotlight shining on her glory. Then, mysteriously, due to a quote-unquote computer malfunction.
Oh, those computer malfunctions.
Right? Do you know
what are you going to do? Snap.
They malfunction when you put the wrong numbers in them. Oh. So, minutes before the award ceremony, suddenly, Nadia's score is changed from a 9-9 to a 9-9-5, which means all of a sudden, out of the blue, she is tying Nelly for gold. Oh, does this sound familiar? Could it be just like the 68 Olympics games when Vera
every competition?
It's all of them. So you cannot have anyone beating the Soviets. You have to tie. So Nelly then, in our story of Nelly's mind, what happened then is then and there, tying Nadia on the podium, on the floor, she vowed to name every single, rise to the top of the FIG and name every skill after herself in the code of points. Oh. There's an excellent documentary about Romania versus the USSR, and it has Arkayev, who's one of the coaches who coached for like 40 years in the Soviet system, and then the unified team, and then Balou from Romania. And they are interviewed about this, about kind of the history of the rivalry. It's a German documentary, and which is not translated accurately, by the way, in my personal opinion. But they talk about the... They show footage of this moment and Nelly just being pissed and like being outside and just looking, and then Nadia's interviewed and she's like, we were great friends outside of gymnastics, but and also Nadia talks about the fact that, you know, everybody remembers my 10, but like Nelly also got a 10 in the same competition, but people talk about me, but she did it too. And Nadia is very, you know, very positive about the whole thing. Nelly looks pissed, so pissed.
Oh. And that's just 1980. That's the first year of this decade we're talking about. And it's already like a decade's worth of drama. So we head to 1981 Worlds following this. And Moscow also hosted the 1981 Worlds. So there was a 0% chance the Soviet Union wasn't winning this competition. They could have splatted 1,800 times and they were still going to win. Mostly because they were the best team there, and obviously the best team there. This was Romania's Post-Nadia team, didn't quite have the depth, but also like the home Soviet judging was preposterous here. Like Olga Bicharova in the team optional competition did a full in, quite a lot of difficulty for 1981, but like basically lost her life in a volcano accident on the landing and did everything but fall and still got a 9.8, which was one of the higher than any non-Soviet in the entire team optional competition. It's like, what is even happening here? What is this sport?
She does the deepest cowboy straddle I don't know how you can squat that low without touching your butt to the ground, but somehow she does it, like runs backwards in the deepest, widest straddle squat you've ever seen, but doesn't fall over. But gets a 9.8.
So she gets a 9.8. She didn't fall over.
Insane.
9.8. Yeah, no, so it's all insane, but also the Soviet Union was leaps and bounds ahead of every other team there. But what was fascinating was this was a great competition for China. They got team silver. And great for East Germany. They got team bronze, but Romania ended up in fourth, which was very surprising because we had seen Romania emerge as, if not the best team, the second best team in the world at this point. Now, I will say this was not a classic all-time legendary Romanian team. They had Eberle on this team. They had Agaki, who is, by the way, not Ekaterina Szabo. And that is a reference to a story I didn't even know about. And I blame everyone for me not knowing about the story because it's the most me story ever. But there was an impersonation controversy in 1981 at a competition in the U.S. where Agaki was sent to a competition under the guise of Ekaterina Szabo. And it was very dramatic. And they sort of like Bart Connor is interviewed in the news piece about it because he was being like a little sleuth. And we love it, where he was like trying to talk to the Romanian men and being like, what's her name? Who is that? Is she impersonating someone else? And trying to get the story. And it's preposterous. And there are weird implications for bringing someone into the country under a false identity being a crime, and Bela Karolyi trying to defect to the United States that year, and what Don Peters knew or not. It's like the most twisted, ridiculous story. Speaks to the insanity, even though this isn't strictly about the Romania-Soviet rivalry. I still want to talk about it because it's crazy. Speaks to the insanity of the desire, like the need to be the best team. Not just like, oh, we want to win. It's like cheating is absolutely acceptable if it means that you are impressive, if you win the thing.
Right. And we know that because we know that Romanian gymnasts have stated emphatically that they had different passports for one for gymnastics and Daniela Silva's, one for gymnastics and one for their real life as a regular citizen. But I had never heard of this until you found this. Never heard of the impersonation.
I was like watching these competitions, getting ready for this episode on YouTube, and someone had uploaded the news story about it. And it's crazy. It's a creepy watch because Don Peters is in it a lot and being creepy, but also fascinating. So we'll link to it, but a warning that it's kind of creepy.
And there's background on that. Don Peters, 1984 Olympic coach in LA, owner of Scats for many years. He is banned permanently from coaching under the USA Gymnastics system for raping minors. So, one other thing I wanted to mention, didn't this happen though? The age we knew about, but the South Korean gymnast who has a twin, didn't they impersonate each other or compete? Or were there supposed to be
twins? I mean, I know about the North, like Hong Eun-jong and Hong Soo-jong.
Yes.
North Korea. They did not impersonate each other. That was like an internet rumor for a while. I want to say like 10 years ago, where people were like, what if Hong Soo-jong? But I feel like, they competed at the same competition. They falsified Hong Eun-jong's age, got falsified all over the place. She had like 1,700 different birth
that's
years.
how it was found out, because she had a twin who, twins, they're born at the same time. So that's a hard thing to fake.
And so sometimes they had, sometimes their birth years were not the same. And it was like, really, North Korea? As we've always said, like, it's one thing to cheat. It's a completely other thing to cheat badly. And so, like, you deserve to be banned.
And clearly, this is another case of white people getting away with whatever they want.
Yep.
Nothing happened in Romania. Clearly, at the time, other gymnasts knew exactly what was happening, and it was in the news. And once again, nothing happened to Romania. They have never been sanctioned for anything. Although I did find out in my research that this is not Romania, but Nelly Kim was sanctioned and suspended for judging for a short amount of time.
What?
Yes. But nothing became of it. Like, she was accused of cheating, but yeah.
Obviously, we need to know the whole story there.
Yeah.
Part 2 of this episode, what's up with Nelly Kim?
Yes.
Do you guys ever watch these old meets and just think like, man, everyone could really use like a calm down snack time? Like when you were a little kid and you had snack time, like instead of the judges and coaches being all hangry and stomping around, like using those old like puke yellow phones in place of like the martini that they really want to throw in someone's face, couldn't they just use like a snack so they weren't so low blood sugar hangry at these like 12-hour meets? Would international world peace actually be achieved if everyone had Huel? Huel? That's today's sponsor, and especially their black edition ready to drink option, so you can sneak it under the judges table without anybody knowing. It's not a snack, it's better. It's a complete meal in one bottle. No purse size portable blender needed. It has 35 grams of protein, 27 vitamins and minerals, high fiber, low sugar, so you'll feel full, focused, and ready to put up with all of Bella Caroli's shenanigans. The best part is no prep, no cleanup, just grab and go. I wish I had one of these that time that I was in the mix zone and I talked to a gymnast for 90 seconds and then her coach, whisper yelled at me afterwards for a 90-second interview, and I should have handed him the black edition Huel and said, like, I understand, you're hangry. Here, this has 35 grams of protein. It's a complete meal. Sorry I took 90 seconds so fans can learn more about this wonderful human that you coach. So I love Huel because it's delicious and portable, and it tastes like yummy milkshake. New customers get 15% plus a free gift using our exclusive code, GymCastic, at Huel.com. That's 15% plus a free gift for new customers using our code GymCastic at Huel.com. Please see our description for terms and conditions. Skip the stress, not the nutrition. Try Huel today for complete nutrition bottled.
So, 1981 Worlds, Romania ends up in 4th place as a team, which was like 20th place because it was Romania, behind East Germany. And this was controversial. Like, that was the closest battle. Like, the Soviet Union was just the best team there. But Romania getting 4th behind East Germany was fascinating, especially because this was the competition when Maxi Ganok, for the great East German gymnast of this era. So it was basically like Romania and the Soviet Union, bum, bum, bum. And then also Maxi Ganok is here because she's amazing, even though East Germany is not going to typically get the same scores. So she, in the second rotation, had to stop her floor routine after one pass, which she just did like a back tuck or something. And then she was going for a leap and couldn't even do the leap because her ankle was so jacked up and she had to stop. And her ankle is taped with like, I mean, it's like a roll of toilet paper around her ankle. Like, there's so much tape on it. It's basically like falling off. So then she walks off the floor and she's immediately surrounded by like 17 coaches and trainers. And then next we see of her, she's magically back and getting a 9.9 on vault and a 9.95 on bars, a score East Germany absolutely needed. Otherwise, they would have finished 4th behind Romania. But she came back 9.95 bars. East Germany gets the bronze. Now, I don't know if there was like East German secret mystery steroid injections, if they just like took her off and pumped her full of horse placenta or whatever they did.
Obviously,
and then
they did.
Brought her back for vault and bars, but that's what I'm assuming is happening.
But she would never know.
Crazy.
Like, yes, just so this is the background on this, like East Germany was known for pioneering sports science and also the use of steroids without the athletes knowing, across all different sports. So much steroids that some female athletes actually eventually changed genders because their bodies they decided to just go through with it because their bodies had transformed so much from the steroids that they were given that they didn't know they were given. So obviously we have no idea what happened to her, but East Germany is proven to have used these.
So that's what I've assumed happened.
Right. But we don't actually know. Also, I will say, I don't have, I don't have a record of Nelly Kim's being suspended or any proof of that any allegations against her were true or that she was found guilty of any kind of cheating at all. That's just, that was just that she was.
Nelly Kim, don't add us.
Right. Right. That is just, something that's happened along in her career, but not any proof that she did anything wrong. I know nothing about that. That wouldn't happen until the Bello Americans. And there's many, just Google it on our site, the Bello Americans. And you'll find
There's
that
so
story.
many controversies. We've had 364 episodes. We've had a lot of time to talk about a lot of controversies.
But finally, we got to impersonation.
I
this is
know.
my favorite. This has to have happened more. I'm telling you. I'm positive.
I hope so.
Okay.
I think we've gone through two weird, myths, legends, weird things that happened in gymnastics episodes and didn't talk about an impersonation controversy.
I know.
I feel like I failed everyone. But yes, 1983 Worlds. Sign of the rivalry. I was watching the team competition of this on YouTube, as we did for all of these competitions getting ready for this. And the BBC coverage of this competition is just a dual meet. It's just the Soviet Union against Romania. There are no other countries. There are no other teams. It's a sign of what the rivalry had become at this point. The team competition wasn't like all the countries get together. It was like, what's going to happen between the Romanians and the Soviet Unions? 1983 Worlds, all-star Soviet team. Yurchenko is there. Mastepanova is there. It's such a deep group. Romania had leaders too, and we'll talk about them, but everyone on the Soviet team in this era was a star. And if you're asking me to pick the sort of defining or most legendary Soviet group, I think it's that 1983 to 1985 era. And the 1992 unified team, I know we're going to have some favorites, and that was an amazing team, obviously a dominant Olympic performance. But for me, the 83 to 85 group defines why the Soviet Union was so far ahead of everyone else, particularly at these 83 Worlds, because of the innovation. This was most famously the first Worlds of the Yurchenko vault. And it's really funny to hear the commentators try to commentate on it without the vocabulary of, oh, this is a Yurchenko vault, because they're kind of surprised by it. They're like, oh, it's a sort of round off Sukahara, right? That she's doing. And I'm like, oh, yeah, Yurchenko. You just weren't calling it a Yurchenko yet because Yurchenko was in the competition. So Natalia Yurchenko was already doing the most perfect Yurchenko tucked, full twist, stuck landing. She was miles better than everyone else in this competition.
Oh,
did you like that?
Miles better.
She was miles better than everyone else. Yeah.
That was beautiful. I'm so proud of you right now, Spencer.
I'm going to pat myself on the back. But I do want to have a moment for another member of the Soviet team who was truly fantastic, Albina Shishova. So the story with the Yurchenko vault is, as far as I know, please, let us know if there's more to this story. But first time in competition that we had Yurchenko performing the Yurchenko vault was at a domestic competition in the Soviet Union in 1982, doing it for a score. This is the thing you could do now. At the same competition, Albina Shishova also performed the same vaults. She also did a round-off vault. But Natalia Yurchenko ended up going to the 82 World Cup event. And in 82, there was no Olympics, there was no World Championships. So the World Cup was the big competition of that year. And so then by the time they both went to 83 Euros, this was kind of already the Yurchenko. But a moment for Albina Shishova, who also performs round-off vaults at this World Championships, because she was doing that vault and those same vaults at the same time as Yurchenko. So there's an alternate bubble universe, right, where everyone talks about the Shishova vaults that they're doing because she was doing it at the same time. She does have a skill.
I love a Shishova. I just want to say that a lot.
Yeah.
Shishova.
Well, there is a Shishova in the code of points, which is the round off back tuck full on beam. Just casually that, which she competed at these 83 Worlds and got named after herself. So you see this innovation, unheard of difficulty being brought out by the Soviet team, in addition to hitting all of the routines and hitting more often than the other countries. They were also doing more difficulty and had performance quality of people like Mastepanova.
And okay, before we talk about Mastepanova, who's glorious, I just want to go back to you're talking about innovation for a second, because I think that one of the things that, and someone who was around during this time, tell us if I'm totally off base here, but I think the Soviets had pits long before any other countries had them. I don't know what the first gyms in the U.S. to have pits were, but I don't think that was until the 80s, or maybe there was 1 or 2 gyms that had pits even in the 70s. And I think that this had a lot to do with what they were able to do, because they used so much trampoline. They had pits. They were using spotting belts, all that kind of stuff that other people, or we only had really in the military in the U.S. and wasn't used so much in, recreational and club gymnastics. Also, you were talking about Shishova's skill, the round off full onto beam. I could not find anywhere a record of who was the first person to ever do a back tuck on beam, just a standing back tuck. I thought it was Corbett.
It's famously Corbett. I mean, I don't know if that's apocryphal or not.
It's not, though. It's the Corbett, not the back tuck. Like, everywhere that I looked it up.
I mean, the named skills of the code of points are a whole big mess. Like, none of that's right.
But this is the thing, though. Is it actually her? Because I could not find everywhere that it said that she was the first one to do it. It was actually describing a Corbett, as in a back handspring roll down, and not a foot-to-foot backward salto. So that made me wonder, is it not named after her because she actually wasn't the first person? Or, because I always thought she was. But when I actually tried to find it, I could not find any record of her being the first person to do it, or any record of anybody else being the first person to do it.
So, we're going to have to do some research. I mean, in my head, it was always like, oh, Corbett's the one who did this.
That's what I thought, too. And then I even went back and watched Gymnastics Greatest Stars, which everyone should own. And if you haven't watched it, you're not a real gym nerd. So please buy it if you can find the VHS tape to support whoever owns a copyright to that, ABC probably, and Bart and Kathy and their voiceover acting skills, voiceover commentating. But also, I went back and watched it, and I thought there was the part where they talked about her innovation, and she would wow people, and she was the first to do this, and then it was the Corbett, not a back tuck. And then
I'm YouTubing right now. She did perform a back tuck on beam at the 72 Olympics.
Right.
I'm watching it right now.
And I feel like Hallie from India, Hallie Sharif, she did this. But in terms of international competition at World or Olympic, I don't know that Corbett's actually really the first one to do it. But maybe she was. I couldn't find something. So anyway, if someone knows this, or if you have the code from that era, something that says it's named after her, because I couldn't find a code after like 90 something. So yeah, we need to invest in those too. Anywho, so who was the first person actually that back tuck was ever named after? And
it may be one of those things that was never named after anyone, especially because in the 1970s the naming was kind of like, it's a bad now, but it was even less official and more indistinct, and like you had to have friends in right places to have skill named after you.
True.
We're gonna talk a little bit more about that later.
You had to have a lifelong vendetta.
Yeah. You had to have a lifelong vendetta, right?
Okay, so let's go back to Mostepanova.
Amazing. I mean, what is there to say? This is the kind of it's the kind of gymnast where you can't compare. It's why you can't compare teams, because you have, the Romanians are doing great gymnastics, but you will see, flick flack and the corkscrew legs, and you're like, how can you compare that to Mostepanova or Omelianchik, who we're going to talk about? It's just a completely different level. And also the scoring was, of course, bonkers at the 1983 Worlds too. It's funny, the coverage I was watching. At one point, Mostepanova gets a 10 for not sticking a vault, as you did in 1983, right. And also current NCAA gymnastics. Don't worry about it.
And also Nadia, the very first 10 ever, right before Nelly Kim.
There's a lot. There's a lot
Big
of non-stuck
on her dismount.
There are a lot of non-stuck 10s, but you can hear the producers of the broadcast talking in the background, and the conversation is like, 10 for who? Mostepanova, huh? A 10. What? Vault. Her? Huh? It's like this, like no one can believe it. Because like she didn't stick that vault. So everyone was getting a 10 just for coughing and for not sticking their vaults. But the most extreme one was Szabo, who was Szabo, not an impersonator, and got a 10 on floor while going obviously out of bounds. So it was just like nothing matters. The scores are not based on reality, but the Soviet Union's great.
So I want to talk a little bit, because we can't talk about the 84 Olympics because the Soviets boycotted because we boycotted them, so they boycotted us and whatever, and then all the athletes suffer.
Everyone's acting like babies.
War continues and it never matters. But anywho, so interruption. Now, I just want to talk during this interruption, because 84 Olympics don't count, except for the Chinese, that, and if you did a great job, feel fulfilled about how you did. Yeah. But the Soviets would have won everything.
Don't do Kathy like that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you did a great job, you should be very proud of yourselves, but everyone knows pretty much the Soviets would have beat everyone.
Yes.
So the Soviets upping...
And that 84 Soviet group.
I mean,
I know.
They were incredible. They were so ahead of their time. They're upping the difficulty so far. Like we think about over the years, the difficulty that they brought. I mean, so we have Corbett doing her Corbett flip on bars, which no one had ever done, doing a Corbett on beam in 1972, doing a back tuck on beam in 1972, Shushanova at the 84 Olympics doing the double straddle side flip rollout skill, which is terrifying, and doing it so beautiful and tumbling out of it. Imagine that, you guys, the double side flip in straddle rollout. The Thomas Salto, she does a full in to rollout too in 1987. Mukina, going back to Mukina, who would have competed in the 80 Olympics if her coach didn't make her kill herself, get paralyzed. She was doing a double back dismount off beam, full twisting Corbett on bars. She was the first woman to do a full in on floor, and that was in the 70s. Do you know how hard the floor was in the 70s? Painful. Every time I watch them, I'm just like, how do you tumble like that on the floor? And this is where we're talking about the innovation again. I think a lot of things changed after 1984, and there was a ton more money in the U.S. There was the Mary Lou explosion of post-Olympics explosion of gymnastics in the U.S. Like we had some of that in the 70s with like Kurt Thomas. And then we had this happen again in 84. And there was, we started, in the 70s and 60s, there was wooden beams and you had to use rosin on them like a ballet dancer. And then they got the beams became covered with a suede. And then they had padding. And then eventually we got them where they had springs and padding and suede covers. Do you know that some gyms still use rosin instead of chalk on beam? On the suede? I had no idea people did that. So there were a lot of innovations in equipment that I think made a big difference, but the Soviets were so far ahead of this, and they continued to innovate, and still continue to innovate. Nabieva, thank you very much. Even though there were people who did it or could do it, but didn't make it successfully in competition before she did it. Okay, so I want to talk about the 84 Olympics, even though the Soviets weren't there, so we can't do our Soviet-Romanian comparison. I do want to talk about China. Because, so China had been out of competition in the 60s. There were a decade they were out. They came slowly back into competition because they were a closed society. Nobody went out. Nobody came in. And then in the 70s, they slowly started to come back into competing international gymnastics. And then a huge, huge event happened that put China way back on the map, and we're talking about innovation. So I want to ask you, it's quiz time.
Okay. Ooh, okay. Trouble.
Which skill was invented by the first gymnast, male or female, to win a world or Olympic medal for China, and also would shave the skin right off your thighs when you did it?
I assume that the first gymnast to win a world or Olympic medal for China was Ma Yanhong.
You are correct.
Okay. I feel good about that. I don't know what skill hers was, though.
Her dismount. What's a ma on bars?
Probably something that's been taken away from her.
It's been taken away from her.
Sorry.
Oh,
we talked about.
Yeah, it's the free hip
full. Oh.
Yes. So, and that's why she said she did it so much, all the skin was gone from her thighs from doing that free hip push, free hip push, free hip push.
So it was a free hip full dismount.
Yes. So you free out of the free hip.
Right.
Yeah. So no swinging, no tap swing, just right out of the full. So it looks crazy. It looks like she's going to die.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that was Worlds before. What year was that? I'm forgetting.
I want to say, it was late 70s when she got her first medal. I want to say like 78.
Like 79 or 78, yeah, something like that. So she becomes a world champion of bars. Then, China hasn't been in the Olympics. Then they show up at 84, full Olympic teams. So the biggest thing that happened there was Li Ning, who showed up, got 6 medals, which was kind of normal for him. He would win like 5 medals when he showed up to meets. He won 6 medals at the 84 Olympics. He also would do a triple back off high bar and rings. And his triple backs, you guys, like we think insane male vaulters invented the straddle tuck position. No, he's in full straddle, knees like giving birth, knees by his ears, full spread, 2 horses underneath him, straddle position. And his triples are huge. Gigantic. So and those mats were so hard back then. Every time he lands, I'm like, it's like a car accident going through his back. Oh my God. And he does it. And he was, I'm just saying, he's kind of hot. I might have had a crush on him back then. I'm not sexualizing him. I'm just saying, and when I was a child, I thought he was attractive. That's all I'm saying. And now he has the big Li Ning company, which is like a Chinese Nike. Let's just say what it is. Very huge in China. Big deal. So 84, China was like, what's up? And brought the innovation and the crazy gigantic skills.
This episode is brought to you by HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. So the thing about the Olympics is that sometimes they end, and it's really not fair. And then how do you go on, or what are you supposed to do? If you're like me, you certainly can't be expected to get out of bed before noon or like do a meal plan. So that's where HelloFresh comes in. With HelloFresh, you get pre-measured ingredients delivered right to your door, which is exactly as much as I can be expected to do right now. The box arrives outside the door. It says, here's food in this box, and here are the instructions, and this is what you're supposed to do, and it's going to take 30 minutes. Thank you. HelloFresh also delivers the produce directly from the farm to your door in less than a week, which means fresh, high-quality ingredients that you also didn't have to plan. Once again, I'd like to emphasize, or like go to a grocery store, because how are you supposed to go to a grocery store? You're still wearing pajamas because you just woke up. So if you would like to be part of the HelloFresh family, as me and Jessica are, go to hellofresh.com/GymCastic14 and use the code GymCastic14 for up to 14 free meals plus free shipping. That's hellofresh.com/GymCastic14 and the code GymCastic14 for up to 14 free meals, including free shipping. And you've also heard us do advertisements for Green Chef. We're working with both currently, so you get double the deals and double the options for meal kit deliveries.
And I would just like to note, because I got open the code of points, the reason I missed Ma Yanhong's skill is because her name is misspelled in the code of points, and that should no surprise no one, because most names are misspelled in the code of points. To talk more about ridiculous naming problems we have with skills, I have a lot of issues with it. So anyway, 1985 World Championships. Soviet Union coming back from not competing at the Olympics in 1984, but competing at the fake Olympics, the Friendship Games. Friendship 84 is what it was called. The alternate Olympics that they hosted for the countries that boycotted, and where they all got 10s and won all the gold medals. Coming back from that, they're casually able to add Oksana Melyanchuk and Shushanova to the group from 83. So, they're just getting better. And the intensity of the rivalry shows most of all in the Silivash age falsification of 1985, when she was given an age 2 years older than her actual age in order to be eligible to compete at Euros and Worlds. This wasn't even for the Olympics. Like, it was so intense, the need to try to somehow contend with the Soviet Union and be successful in some way, that you're age falsifying for like the European championships. Ultimately, Romania had a really good team and was making a lot of progress here, but it was like Silivash was still really young, and she would, 87 and 88 were like her years. You saw a Romanian team that wasn't quite as deep, and it ultimately was the rivalry of 85 Worlds was the Soviet rivalry with each other. Like, this team is so stacked to the point where Omelyanchik and Shushanova placed 4th and 5th among the Soviets in qualification. But then they also tied for the all-around title because the people who qualified ahead of them, Mastepanova and Baraksonova, were Galievad out of the all-around final, so that Omelyanchik and Shushanova, yes, they were fake injury to per country out of the rest of the competition, so that Omelyanchik and Shushanova could compete in the all-around final. And that's how deep this team was. Like, you had Shushanova got 5th in qualification on her own team, is how good this team was. They had champions coming out of every orifice possible. Like, Mastepanova had just won the all-around at Friendship 84 ahead of Shushanova and ahead of Natalia Yurchenko. She scored 10 tens there and was still deemed not one of the most likely 3 people on the team to win the all-around gold medal. Like, that's how good this Soviet team was. And so you had Romania, a good team, did well, but it was like there was no chance. There was no chance they were going to catch the Soviet team. And then you had, the all-around final was the big rivalry of the all-around final after qualification was supposed to be Yurchenko against Szabo, like Soviet Romania head-to-head. Szabo fell on beam on that kick over front to sit that she did. She was just kind of like, oh, I'm sitting on air. And Yurchenko fell on bars, so then it was all up in the air. But we did see Romanian evolution at this Worlds, particularly and I know this isn't like the scores, the skills, although we do evaluate artistry and the routines, but this was the point, I think, where Romania got rid of the ants in your pants chicken dance floor routine phase. That's very like late 70s and early 80s, where everyone's like, I don't know what's happening, but you're having like a seizure on the floor and doing like a series of like kindergarten unity dances as your floor choreography. And they were sort of moving into the like soundtrack to Fiddler on the Roof phase, where it was a lot of like every single floor routine was like, I wish I were a rich man, just over and over again.
And we'd get that all the way through in the 90s and 2000s. Yeah.
The like pandering folk music routines that started in 85, which is like, I know it's annoying. It was better than what came before. And you were seeing a more, I guess it's like a more, I don't want to say a more serious Romanian team, because it was like super serious and took it like really intense about it. But there was more competitive difficulty. There was more like, this is an adult, a floor routine that an adult would have, I guess. Does that make any sense? Or am I just like nonsense?
No, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they weren't like children throwing a tantrum, which is what they looked like before, and like that was cute. Now that's like the Karoli style. They gave it to Mociano in '96, literally acting like a 5-year-old having a tantrum in her floor routine, and it's like, oh yeah, that's what a 14-year-old does. This is normal. Can we go back to age falsification first?
Always my favorite topic.
There has never been proof of a Soviet age falsification, right?
Not that I know of.
Right.
I mean, the assumption is kind of like, I'm sure they did it, but I don't know of any story of that in the same way that we've had gymnasts from China and Romania come out and say like, oh yeah, they gave me a fake passport and I was 2 years younger then.
Now, do you think that we have never had that because A, it didn't happen? No, you just said that, yeah, it probably happened. Or B, because Romanians are like, what's Romania going to do to me? Like, pfft.
I think there's definitely part of that.
Whereas with Soviet Union or Russia, they're like, yes, they could still get me now. So I will not be revealing that secret.
Yeah, and I mean, we have no way of knowing, but I would be surprised if, like, we haven't found out a lot of cheating stories about the Soviet Union. Like, we know the judges were in the tank and there was all that behind the scenes stuff, but it's still very veiled, much more so than all of these Romanian stories that we know now about all the crazy things that they were doing and the impersonating other gymnasts.
And I wonder if that's kind of because, I mean, I know, the Soviet Union fell, but it's not like it, the state secret stuff fell with it. Whereas Romania, they took down the dictatorship. It's a different kind of country now. And I wonder if the politics play into why there aren't more stories, or if it's because they're so amazing and they had
it could just be like, we're literally so good that we don't need to make this 13-year-old into 15 because we have 7 15-year-olds who could all win the world all-around title right now.
Right, and when you think about it, when you think, I think back to what the Netherlands says, Netherlands drink, everyone, that's a tiny country. Romania is a very small country. They only had so many people, where the Soviet Union was gigantic. It was almost a full continent. And they had so many people to choose from all over. So it was like, if someone didn't work out, you just find someone else. Where instead of...
I mean, you look at the U.S. now. We like to think that the U.S. would never engage in any kind of underhanded behavior because we don't believe in unfairness and morality. But think about the Karolys being in charge for as long as they were. They were not above that. So, they didn't have to. You didn't have to because you have 700 more gymnasts. The attitude was there's always someone else where that came from.
Right. No, and Marta literally gave interviews where she said just that. It doesn't matter. You have to be the best right now. We don't depend on your history, whatever. Also, I think it has to do maybe with the Soviets having just a completely insane training system and all of the resources that they needed during that period of time, with pits and, all the stuff that I talked about before that, that other countries just didn't have. So not only did they have an enormous amount of people to draw from, but they had better training facilities than everybody else. Yeah.
And cared a lot more than ever. I mean, Romania cared, obviously, about winning, but it was this is the thing. We're going to pump everything into winning sporting events.
And in that documentary, that German documentary that I watched, they talked about, Arkayev talked about, and he coached for 40 years, about how, Russia... Gymnastics is part of their cultural history and has been since the time of Latinida, and they wouldn't want to be, quote unquote, ashamed by their results. You will bring, he literally is saying, if we mess up in gymnastics, it shames our country. That's an enormous amount of pressure, and that shows you how important gymnastics is to the identity of the country. I know the Soviet Union is not Russia, but, it's a big deal there. I'm just saying. Okay, so
I also want to interject because I feel like we have some time to just shoot the breeze.
Yes.
Watching these competitions back is horrifying in terms of the commentary.
Yes.
It's disgusting.
Give us some
and
examples.
It makes me feel kind of gross to watch the constant focus on well, she was, at the European Championships this year, she was far too overweight. And I feel like she must have lost 10 pounds since, they're giving estimates and speculating about people's weights. And it's just so gross to listen to. And this little girl, she was, let's be honest, she was quite chunky, when she first debuted, and she's really grown into and gotten rid of that puffy fat. And it's just it's hard to watch. It's hard to listen to. And
all the comments
makes me feel
about,
gross.
How about, I think she's going to kiss him. I think there's a romance. I think she is beautiful. Talk about, there's so much focus on how they look.
You wonder why everything is so screwed up.
Right.
You shouldn't wonder. Because this is the culture of the sport and what people grew up with. That's just how you talk about it.
Right.
That's how you talk about people.
And there's
that's
still
how you talk
countries where that's totally normal.
And by countries, you mean states. And by states, you mean gyms. And by gyms, we mean most of them.
But I also think about South Korea, where it's normal to, when you submit your application for a job, you also include a picture. And when you go to high school, it's normal to be weighed, especially the girls. So beauty is a huge issue and super emphasized in the culture, and how you look is incredibly important. And I'm not saying every single place in all of South Korea is like this, or maybe it is, I don't know. But I'm just saying that, that is a thing in some countries. I remember that there was a gymnast who was coming here from one of the Eastern Bloc countries, and she was like, okay, what do I need for my application here? And she sent it over, and I like had her picture and all the stuff, and I was like, no, don't put your picture on your application or your resume. And she was like, what? And I was like, no picture. We don't do that here. And she was just like, that's shocking. Like, of course they need to know what you look like. I was like, no. But that was totally not part of the culture. So, yeah.
I just needed to talk about that because it was like, ooh, every 2 seconds.
Yeah. I had to turn the sound off for some of it because of some of the things that I watched in preparation for this because it makes me so angry. And I know things have changed. Like, things have really, really changed. But then you listen to the commentary in other countries, and it's exactly the same. So some things are better. I mean, we have Ollie now. We have, Kathy and Bart. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Even NBC is better, shockingly. Still lots of problems, but even they are better. So keep pushing it the right direction. So let's
1987.
talk about 87.
The tide turns. The year the tide turns.
Da, da, da.
European Championships in 1987 went back to Moscow, and yet Silivash still won the all-around title. At a Soviet Union hosted event, a Romanian won the all-around title, which indicates what the change that had happened. It's like, because 1981, when the Soviet Union hosted Worlds, as we talked about, there was no chance. There was no chance a non-Soviet was going to win that all-around title ever. And now you have Silivash winning in Moscow. Shushanova also fell on bars, so there was no chance to like bump that score up. And she still got a 9.5, by the way. Talk about perfect 9.5 with a fall. Shushanova still got a 9.5.
There it is, the perfect
on
9.5.
bars. So I'm not saying everything's like the cheating's done, but I'm saying Silivash won the all-around title and was far and away the strongest gymnast in that competition. It wasn't a great all-around competition. Like Shushanova and Baitova for the Soviet Union also both fell on bars in the all-around final. This isn't an impervious Soviet team, which is shocking because we went through many years in the 1980s of impervious Soviet teams. And this group, great, talented, amazing, could fall, could have bad days. And we went to then Worlds in 1987, and Romania got its next win. 8 years removed from 1979 and the Fort Worth infected wrist gate victory. Romania gets its win at such a stacked competition. You had the Romanian team with Silivash and Dobre and Szabo, and you had the Soviet team with Shushanova and Omelyanchik and Baitova and Bogi. Bogi wasn't fully bogified yet. That would come in 88, but Bogi was on that team too. It's legends pouring out of the arena at this competition. But I think one of the big changes here was, in addition to Silivash, we've talked about her many times, amazing legend, the addition of Aurelia Dobre to the Romanian team changed the game, because what the Soviet Union had going for it before 1987 was that increased attention to detail. You had just these perfect routines compared to Romania putting up difficult, solid routines, but the form wasn't the same. The extension, the toe point, the knees, it just wasn't the same. Now in 1987, the most refined, exquisite gymnastics in the competition belonged to a Romanian rather than a Soviet. Plus, the risk was there. You had Golia on the Romanian team throwing a Yurchenko double full, which gets me into more, I'm going to do more code complaining and call for some more code justice, because 1987 Worlds, Baitova of the Soviet Union, Yurchenko double full. Golia of Romania, Yurchenko double full. Code of points, this skill is the Baitova. Excuse me. Golia also did the same skill. And by the way, stuck it in TM optionals, and it still reigns as one of the best Yurchenko double fulls ever. And we're seeing the extreme pro-Soviet bias in skill naming, and not just Nelly Kim going back and naming skills after herself. Like, Elena Davidova got the Tkachev retroactively named after herself, like 10 years after she did it at the 1980 Olympics. And I'm not saying it's not deserved. I'm saying try doing that if you're from another country. Like, there's so many gymnasts who have skills that should be named after them that they still don't have named after themselves in the code of points. But if you're from a certain group, you can get things named after yourself. And Baitova has the Yurchenko double full, even though Golia did it at the same competition. that's my further rant about skill naming.
Do we have, I bet there is some gym nerd who has put together the real list of named skills.
There is one. I'm working on revamping my elite skill database. I'm going to have a page for every skill in the code of points with like analysis and naming history and whether I like it or not. It's work in progress. Vault's done. Bars is like halfway done. So it's going to be a while, but it's happening.
You are that gym nerd. That gym nerd I always hope was out there. It's you, Spencer. It's
there
always
is another
you.
site. There's a good, like a Google site that someone put together called...
I love that you just ignored all of my emotions.
I don't deal
about
with
your
that.
work
Well,
there. That was so Spencer right there.
Yeah.
Bloop, moving on.
Women's Gymnastics First.info.
Ooh.
Has some good stuff. There's like a Google site also, WAG Firsts, which has pages for each event and like the first people to do skills and whether like ones that were removed from the code of points. So that's a good resource. We'll link to it.
Yes. Ooh, excellent. Well, maybe they have the back tuck. The backwards.
Ooh, I'll check right now. You talk about like
Okay.
something else that happened, and I'll check right now.
Okay, one thing
because we're really prepared for this.
We're so prepared. We have a lot of questions. We need the definitive history of gymnastics by skill video. We need to, I think we're going to have to write that book is what's going to happen. I did want to go back for a second because I was talking about Nadia's score being changed so she would tie with Nelly Kim at the 80 Olympics in the event finals. And I was using the example of Soviets always have to win. Well, Soviet did win, and then they had a Romanian. So I totally contradicted myself. But my point about that I was trying to make that I forgot about is that the cheating was rigged, and I totally think it was a favor, and there was an exchange, and we found out that that's literally how it worked in 1988 when Greg Marsden was of Utah coaching fame, now retired, who was revealed that the whole thing was rigged and everyone was cheating. And I think that he said that he went to there was a pre-World Championships party and all of the officials and the judges were there and they were doing favor swapping. So they were saying, I'll make sure your athlete wins on vault if you make sure that my athlete from this country wins on this. So there was absolutely rigging, favor swapping, cheating that went on. And he talked about it all. And he talked about it happening between Romania and the United States at those worlds. So, and that was in 1988. So I think that is exactly what happened at those worlds was that, and probably what happened in 68 too, is that the Soviets were supposed to win outright, but there had been a deal to make sure that, Nadia won at least one event. And so they had to quick change the score because the judges actually judged instead of doing the dealing that was done in a party somewhere or in an alley or in a, actually it's not in an alley. I always say like meet me in the alley, but really these things happen at very posh parties and hotels at these championships. That's
they
what
don't need
goes
to do
on.
alleys.
They don't need alleys. It's all done.
Look at the offices of organizations like the IOC and FIFA.
Right, no.
There's no alleys.
There's always there's a unicorn walking by serving a champagne on diamonds.
These happen at the Category 1 hotel.
Right, exactly.
That's a reference no one's going to care about, but anyway.
So anyway, I wanted to mention that.
Yeah. So at this website that I just called out, they say Olga Korbut, 1969 USSR Nationals, was the first person to do a tuckback salto on beam, and then she did it at the 1972 Olympics.
Okay, so it is her for sure. Now we know. Excellent. Everybody recall your emails that you were sending to confirm that. So there we go.
Yeah. So back to 1987. I need to talk more about Aurelia Dobre because she's just so important.
She is so important.
Her beam, because I feel like she doesn't get the attention because then at the 88 Olympics, she was not at full strength. She competed there, but it wasn't at the level that she was competing in 1987 when she was absolutely outright the best gymnast in the world. And her beam routine in team optionals, which was the only 10 that anyone got on beam in that part of the competition, it is one of the most phenomenal beam routines anyone's ever done. She got 3 10s out of 4 events in that team final. It was phenomenal.
Yep. I remember, like, there aren't a lot of people that I absolutely remember. And I remember Silivaska, but I remember her being like, and Silivaska had amazing form and difficulty, performance quality, incredible. But Dobre, I mean, Bogey always I remembered. And the Dobre, those worlds, I remember so vividly. And I had a poster, like International Gymnast had a poster of her, and it's so scandalous. And I can't believe I have that on my wall now. But it's like her doing a straddled mana on beam, which is super hard. But she was so captivating. Her gymnastics had a quality that only I think Boganskaya had. And Bogey wasn't full Bogey, like you were saying yet. Bogey would later have that kind of quality, but you just couldn't take your eyes off her. And everything was so incredibly perfect. And I agree that I don't feel like she gets her due because she didn't have the longevity. But I don't care. I don't care about the longevity because
the annoying thing that when you like try to Google her now, it's those YouTube sons are the ones who come out
because
she
twins.
has like
How
the
dare
YouTube
they?
sons, and I'm like, okay, first of all, there is one member of this family that should be anywhere near famous, and it is your mother. This is unacceptable.
You kids are cute, but your mom.
You kids, get out of here. Get off my lawn.
And the one thing I feel about people not getting their due is like we talk so much about people that are, who has the most medals and who competed for the longest period of time and all that stuff. But somebody like Dobre worked her entire life to be that good at that moment. And that in itself should be an achievement. It's not just that. And even if she won nothing, she was still, it wouldn't matter. Like even if all the scores were completely corrupt and she deserved to win and she did. But I don't even care because you know how I feel about winning. I don't care. She just absolutely stands out as just one of those people that when you look up how skills should be done and performed and extended and her present, she's just 1 in a million. She's incredible. Still to this day, kids. So keep putting your mom in the videos because she can do all of her skills and she's the one we really want to see. No, anyway. No, but seriously.
But seriously, yeah. That wasn't a joke. We absolutely won.
No, that's 100%.
So Aurelia Dobre, all-around champion, 1987 Worlds, that all-around final. So this was not a two-way rivalry. You can't construct this as like Nadia and Nelly because you had Dobre and Shushinova and Silivash and Baitova and Omelyanchik and Sabo who fell a billion times. And I feel like heartbreaking career of the 1980s. I know Sabo won a billion medals in 1984, so it's not like I feel bad for you. But I felt every time I'm looking through these Romania-Soviet rivalries in the big moment, it's like, oh, Sabo fell on beam again. But yeah, this wasn't a two-way rivalry. This was like an 18-way rivalry in this kind of all-around final. And fantastic back and forth between the two countries. Not always, like, Romania was not always in contention throughout the 80s, but what makes it a rivalry is how badly they wanted it and the fact that they did win sometimes. Like, you have the 79 result, you have the 87 result. Otherwise, it would just be like saying that right now the U.S. women have a rivalry with Russia, which they do because it's exciting, but like there's one winner right now. And at least at this point, the Soviet Union was so dominant, but every once in a while, Romania would like get up there and hopefully we'll have another country getting up there to challenge the U.S. women now to make the team finals not so boring.
So thank you so much to Chemo for commissioning this episode. If you guys want to commission an episode, go to gymcastic.com, click on the Support Us tab. And if you don't want to commission a full episode, you can just become a member. You get some perks and special discounts on our merchandise just for becoming a member, and you support us in all of our many endeavors. So thank you so much to all of our Club Gym Nerd members who support everything we do. We could not do this without you. Remember, there are show notes and links to videos and stuff like that in the show notes on whatever you're listening on. Thanks for listening. See you guys next week.